Circuit Zandvoort in the Netherlands is the venue for the fourth race weekend of the 2019 FIA WTCR. And after 2 races so far, we have had 2 different winners and a change in the points leadership. Will the third and final race weekend throw up a first-time winner this season? Or will race 1 winner Ted Björk triumph over teammate Jan Erlaché? They start on the front row of the grid. We will see what the final race produces. What it won't produce, I'm afraid, is a little bit of sunshine. Hello, everybody. I'm Martin Having. Alongside me, Richard Coleman. Down in the pit lane is Alex Le Gouy. And Richard, right on the North Sea shore, we have got a bit of a sea breeze coming in, and it's still a misty, damp-ish afternoon.
Yeah, as you said, Martin, right next to the sea here, literally on the beach, surrounded by the sand dunes, and very often this wind picks up the sand, blows it across the circuit, running a challenge for all the drivers and engineers alike. The weather can change very, very quickly here.
Well, there is our DHL pole sitter for the final race. It should have been another Lincoln Co. run by Cyan Racing, that of Ivan Muller, who set the fastest lap, but it turned out that the boost pressure on his car during Q3 did not relate accurately to the limits set within that and the ambient air pressure, and so Ivan lost his lap time and will start down in 5th position. So Jan Erlaché inherits his first race 3 pole of the season. Ted Björk sits on the outside of the front row of the grid. Björk won race 1 from pole position on Saturday. Norbert Mikulits and Augusto Farfus are on row 2 of the grid. At the back there, you can see Gordon Shedden and Tom Coronel, one of the local heroes. Katzberg, another local hero. He will start firmly in the top 10 in 7th position.
Hello everyone, here Nicky Katzberg live from my BRC, Hyundai and Luco racing team. Number 88 car on the grid in Zandvoort, my home race, and what an event this is. So many people here, and honestly, maybe one of the busiest events of the season. I feel a lot of support from all the fans here. Although I guess many of them are here for Max, but I'll just pretend they are here for me. A lot of support from my family, and hopefully in this race I can go forward a little bit. I will try and take a bit of risk into turn 1, and hopefully give you a nice spectacle to watch. And yeah, please give me a lot of support, and I wish you all a nice day and some good races. Ciao, ciao.
Well, considering he's in a Hyundai, it hasn't been a bad weekend so far for Nicky Katzberg. 4th place in the first encounter today. And Richard, that was pretty much as good as Hyundai have ever gone here, really.
Yeah, definitely. Him and Norbert Mikulits have been leading the way for Hyundai this weekend, with Gabriele Tacchini conspicuous by his absence, really, not having a strong weekend at all. And Augusto Farfus kind of there or thereabouts, but yeah, certainly not a strong weekend for Hyundai, as we have seen in recent races.
Well, looking here at some of the highlights from race 1, this is Attila Tashi, the Hungarian driver, going off. And in fact, that's not from race 1. Is that on his way to the grid? Looks like it might well have been. That's a familiar place for cars to go off. His teammate Thiago Monteiro went off there in first qualifying.
Take a moment to have a quick word with Jean Todt. Jean, it is fantastic to have you here on the WTCR grid. And what exciting news to be back here with Formula One next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, but you see, even without Formula One, it's a big enthusiasm for WTCR, with more than 50,000 spectators, a lot of action, a lot of passion, so very happy to be here.
The Dutch fans are fantastic.
They are, and they have now their new hero, Max Verstappen, so it helps.
Have you managed to have a word to any of our drivers? Who is your money on?
You know, in my position, I should forbid myself to put money on anybody, but I think what is good is very close competition, a lot of team, lot of manufacturers involved, young drivers, older drivers, so it's a good combination.
Great to hear. Thank you very much, John. Have a lovely rest of your day.
It is very close indeed. Biggest gap in the entire field was just a couple of seconds in the second race. In fact, from the winner of the race down to the final running car in 25th position, the gap at the flag was 18 seconds. So not even a second per car. That's pretty impressive stuff, and some of the gaps were measured in hundreds all the way through the race. In fact, the difference between 10th and 11th in qualifying was 0.04 of a second between Esteban Guerrieri, who was 10th, and teammate Nestor Girolami, who was 11th. Guerrieri got promoted to the front row of the race 2 grid as a result, but he starts here in 10th. Our DHL pole sitter is Jan Erlache, ahead of race 1 winner Ted Björk. Norby Michelis, Augusto Farfus, both been very quick here in their Hyundais. Norby scored more points, Farfus has had more misfortune. Ivar Muller in 5th position, ahead of Mikel Askerna, who followed him all the way through. They were 2nd and 3rd in race 1. Nicky Katzberg starts 7th, ahead of Johan Kristoffersen, who was 3rd in race 2. Benny Loister, who was 2nd in race 2, and Esteban Guerrieri, who won race 2. They started 3rd, 2nd and 1st on that grid. Nestor Girolami and Rob Huff are both on row 6 of the grid again. That's where they started the previous race, and for everybody else, that's the same story. Panis and Tarquini on row 7. Strange to say now, having not mentioned his name almost all weekend, that Tarquini already has 2 wins this season. Vernet's got 1 win. He lies in 15th on the grid with Benani alongside him in 16th. Andy Prio qualified 3rd fastest yesterday and finished just off the podium. He only qualified 17th today, ahead of another of our Dutch heroes, who will start in 18th place, Niels Langeveld. Kevin Chacon and Frederick Verbisch both on the podium in Slovakia a week ago, on row 10 of the grid, ahead of Attila Tassi and Daniel Hegloff. Thiago Monteiro 23rd, ahead of our race 3 Slovakia winner Marcin Kła, who starts 24th. Tom Coronel, the local hero, and Gordon Shedden make up the final and 13th row of our 26-car grid. No wild cards here this weekend, but we have as many Dutch drivers as we did last year, because we have regained Nicky Katzberg and also had added to the frame Niels Langeveld. So that is the grid, and in a moment or two we'll get a chance perhaps to hear from our poleman on his thoughts of a maiden win for the team. Cars on the grid. In the bottom end of the top 10, Johan Kristoffersen for Sebastian Loeb Racing Volkswagen. Both he and his teammate, who starts just behind him, Benny Loister, really pushed hard to try and get by the pole-sitting Honda of Esteban Guerrieri. They ended up with their first podiums of the season, and for these guys, you know, that's 11 races into this championship. That must have felt like it took a long time coming.
Yeah, it must have done, and you know, Rob Huff and Mehdi Benani, both in the sister Volkswagen, still waiting their turn for a decent result, really. Rob plagued with a few elements of bad luck throughout the weekend, took an engine change only yesterday. But yeah, very, very pleasing for Volkswagen Motorsport to get 2 cars onto the podium, and that's the thing sometimes you forget, you know, it's obviously a big relief to the drivers, but of course every single member of the team wants to win as much as they do.
Exactly, and there is definitely a lot of top-down pressure from Volkswagen Group to make that a success. In 7th place on the grid, Nicky Katzberg, so one of our Dutch heroes. In fact, he's the guy who has done the best job so far this weekend. 10th in race 1 and 4th in race 2, so he's added significantly to his points haul. Don't forget, of course, it was he that claimed pole position in both qualifying sessions a week ago in Slovakia. In fact, on Friday they were both in Slovakia. Didn't win either race 1 or race 3 that he started from pole, but he still scored strongly and looks like doing that here again. So after a tough time in the first 2 race weekends in Marrakesh and in the Hungaroring, suddenly his season is starting to come alive. This guy, though, Mikel Askerna, the reigning TCR Europe champion who won on this circuit last year, now he really did hit the ground running. He was on the podium right from the word go in Marrakesh, and he has been pretty much in the top 10 ever since. So a great young addition to the championship.
Yeah, he's really impressed everybody with how mature he's been. He's driving without fear, lots of confidence, the results to back it up. And I think sometimes that's the virtue of not having an expectation going into the season in an under-fancied car. He's done a really, really good job this year.
Well, this is into turn 1 on the first start today. Inside Ivar Muller. You notice how far the curb is away on the inside the apex and how close all the others are to it. Muller taking the wide line there to guarantee that Askerna couldn't retaliate on the outside of the corner. That's where all that experience pays in. You know how to do these things without being unfair, just being assertive of your line. And Ivar Muller, Well, Michele Ascona was saying that he was chasing him all the way in race 1. He said this was ridiculous. 5 years ago, when he was still karting, Ascona was watching World Touring Car races with Ivan winning on the television, and here he was racing him. He said it's one of those little pinch you moments afterwards where you realise exactly how far you've come in such a short period. With Ivan Muller, the fastest lap in qualifying. Not sure that anybody really suggests that the slight anomaly in the boost pressure was responsible for all of his speed. It certainly looked like an absolutely mighty lap. And the closest contenders, Jan Ehrlich, Ted Björk, they both made the same mistake. They had a big slide in turn 1. Ivan was much more, well, not neat and precise, but much more controlled in his aggression in the car, wasn't he? It had the look of a pole lap all the way through from the driving.
Certainly was. Stunning lap from Ivan Muller, and unfortunate for him to pick up a penalty, but he should still score good championship points. Didn't have the best race too. Got a little bit scrappy, had that moment running wide and dropping a couple of places. But yeah, he should be well placed and maybe even looking for a podium.
And of course, that was not driver error. That was a problem with the brakes. Suddenly, he started encounter pad knockoff, where the pads get pushed away by the vibrating disc from their normal operating position. That makes them very snatchy and grabby, and robs the driver of the ultimate feel he needs. So hopefully they've been able to do something about that, but it is a little bit of a bumpy circuit, and that exacerbates the problem. But if they've got that problem here, Lord help them when they get to Villarreal, because that really is on the bumps on the streets. So Ivan Muller starts in 5th position, Augusto Farfus in 4th position, and both of the Lukoil cars, Farfus and Katzberg, with much more consistent pace this weekend. Farfus really starting to get on top of the car. 3rd place, Norbert Michelis. Well, he's driven nothing but front-wheel drive race cars for several years, so he's really on top of this Hyundai. Raced, of course, for the same team last year with Gabriele Tarquini, so they know the car, but it's an entirely different beast this year. Last year, they were the victim of a sort of panic change in BOP that completely rendered them incapable of performing here. This year, it's been a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction with Lincoln Co. that led to an anomaly in first qualifying. That's been balanced out again, and so the Lincoln Co. cars, while being fast and competitive, are not half a second or 3/4 of a second clear of the field, as looked like might be the case. Ted Björk 3rd in the championship standings with 1 race to go this weekend, and after winning race 1, finished just outside the top 10 in 12th position, but still in the points. Don't forget, this year points going down to 15th. So again, it's going to be a good race weekend, all if he can just hold on to a podium position, either ahead of Jan Ehrlich, behind Jan Ehrlich, behind Norby, whatever. As long as he doesn't lose too many spots, this is going to be a big scoring weekend. And the man on pole position, chance for a first win for Jan Ehrlich this season, and he's not going to let anybody go by easy, is he?
He's certainly not, and he hasn't had exactly the best start to the year. He hasn't had the results that he perhaps deserves and the pace that he's shown. So he'll be extremely keen to win this race.
Well, he already has 5 points on the board from the first qualifying, or from Q3. He has 2 points from first qualifying and 9 points earned in race 1. Wasn't the strongest race for him. 8 points in race 2. So it is gradually adding to his tally. What he'll really want is to nail this win.
And of course, he and his teammate starting alongside him, Ted Björk, in race 2. Those guys were side by side for best part of half a lap, literally wheel to wheel, before Jan finally getting the better of Ted. So yeah, they're not afraid to go wheel to wheel on that opening lap, and that's a theme to look out for on the opener of this.
And Jan qualified 4th in Saturday's qualifying, but then with a grid penalty, he was dropped a couple of spots down to 9th place on the grid, so didn't get to start that high up, and that affected his point score. But here, he's just got to do what Ted Björk did in race 1, which is make a clean start and make sure the guy, his teammate on the inside line, does not get alongside him into Tarzan. The team were pretty clear, I think, to their drivers in race 1. The formation out of Tarzan at the end of lap 1, or at the beginning of lap 1, that is the way you're going to race, unless there's some breakdowns, and I think that's very much the case. So if Ehrlich wants to win this, job 1 will be to beat Björk away from pole, and to that end he tries to leave a little bit of rubber in his grid box. Now, neither side is particularly disadvantaged on this grid. They're likely to be equally dusty and sandy from the sand dunes. So hopefully there should be no miscues for our pole man. So the field heading away around the Zandvoort circuit for the final time before racing commences. Third and final race of this fourth race weekend of the FIA WTCR. You saw a little moment there, Nicky Katsberg, like he tends to do, having some massive weaves in his Hyundai right ahead of the two Golfs. On this roller coaster track though, Richard, you've got to be a little bit careful of where you put in the weaves so you don't end off backwards.
Yeah, it's a lot of high-speed areas, but there's not that many that are completely straight, other than the start-finish, really. The tyres are always doing something, and that leads to this circuit being quite a high tyre wear circuit. They never really cool off during the lap, and the drivers tend to drop off quite significantly in the closing stages just because they don't have the grip from the tyres.
15-lap race. This is going to be the longest of the weekend. The previous two were scheduled for 12 laps. Race 2 went to 14 because we had 2 laps of the safety car, and we added 2 laps because of that. What's going to be an interesting factor, I think, for us is how the tyre degradation affects the two Lynk & Co cars that start on the front row of the grid compared to perhaps the slightly more experienced teams that are running the Hyundais on row 2, and things like Mikel Ascona's Cupra, how that's going to work as well. The Lynk & Co cars, a little bit of an unknown here, so they may well get into the lead, but we saw a little bit of tail endness creeping into the cars late in race 2, and there'll be a further 3 racing laps to do in this one as well, so that might all add up to pressure for the leaders at the end of the race. Whether Jan Lachey and Ted Bjerg can hold off the rest of them remains to be seen. Ted Bjerg could do with the points, currently 3rd in the championship ahead of Norbert Mikelitz and Mikel Ascona, but chasing Esteban Girolami and Esteban Guerrieri and Nestor Girolami. Esther and Nestor, that's enough to confuse a simple person. Nicky Katsberg heading towards the grid, ready to take up his spot in 7th position. All in all, Munich Motorsport leading our team's championship from Cyan Racing Lynk & Co. That particular Cyan Racing team is the Ted Bjerg Ivar Muller duo. Let's hear from Frederick Verbisch in the Audi.
A lot of headwind. There was a lot of headwind this morning. There's even more now, so just for info, lots of headwind.
Now, Richard Coleman, does that mean it's going to be better for the cars under braking? They can brake later down into Tarzan at the end of the straight?
Yes is the short answer, but the more interesting theme of that for us is that it should make overtaking easier. The wind speeds are headwind, the toe, the low pressure that the car punches for the car behind will make a big difference. So hopefully we can get some good overtaking.
Race 3, FIA WTCR Zandvoort in the Netherlands, the final race of this 4th race weekend. 26 cars are on the grid, and we are ready to get underway with Jan Lachey and Ted Bjerg on row 1. Behind them, Norbert Mikelitz and Augusto Farfus. The green flag has waved, and away we go. Solid start for Lachey, but not solid enough. Has to make contact with Ted Bjerg, and that's not going to win. Bjerg had the inside line and the momentum, and down the inside goes Augusto Farfus. Luckily, Lachey tucks in into 2nd place, but that will not have earned him any brownie points with the team. Banging doors with your teammate on the run down to turn 1 doesn't help. 3 wide behind, Gabriele Tarquini trying to go underneath Nicky Katsberg. Can't do it, but he did get ahead of both of the Volkswagens. So Tarquini coming from 14th on the grid. He earned a jump start penalty last week in Slovakia. That looks like he's made up an awful lot of ground because the Volkswagens were 8th and 9th on the grid.
Yeah, like I just didn't get away, did he? That first part of the start didn't get away. 2nd stage was okay, but at that point he'd already chopped across Ted Bjerg, and as you said, I imagine there'll be some frowns on the pit wall for that one.
Andy Priaulx on the attack further back. Priaulx starting from 17th. You saw him diving to the inside as Jean-Carl Vernet, who was 15th on the grid. And again, he has a lunge. Drifting out wide is one of the Golfs, one of the many Golfs, and that is Benny Leuchter. And he's going to lose a place there to Nesta Girolami, or is the Argentine going to be eased out on the dirt? He was, but look at Aurelian Panis in the yellow car. That's just outside the top 10. Rob Huff started in 12th place, and he is the middle of that Volkswagen sandwich. Mehdi Benani coming on strong as well. So it looks like the Golfs are very strong early on. First lap just about completed here. Ted Bjerg, the race 1 winner, looking for win number 3 of his season. Bjerg with 2 wins so far, Guerrieri with 2, Tarquini with 2, Nesta Girolami with 3, and Bjerg looking to close the gap on the 2 Argentine Honda drivers. Erlacher across the line in second. Big battle further back. That's Mikulits, I think, or Tarquini defending his place against Rob Huff, the car number 12. Huff now the best of the Golfs ahead of Benny Leuchter. No, he's not. Johan Kristoffersson is up in 7th ahead of them. And Panis on the, that's Coronel on the outside between the 2 KCMG Hondas, with Thiago Monteiro in front and Attila Tashi behind. Marcin Quark, Gordon Shedden, and last in the train is Daniel Heglerf in the 2nd PWR Racing Cupra, who clearly either had a shocking start off the grid or got nudged off out wide somewhere. Riding on board with Ivan Muller, and Muller is currently lying in 5th position, chasing down Norbert Mikulis. Nothing to see here, fans. Watch the other way. Norby and Ivan have a lot of history, and a lot of history on this track, particularly from last year. And Norby going very defensive from the blue car behind. There's Augusto Farfus. He's in 3rd. Ivan will be in 4th very soon, the way he's going.
Yeah, just setting him up there, just making Mikulits go defensive and then taking advantage of all the extra tarmac available to him.
The problem for Ivan Muller is if he doesn't get this done quickly, look at the grey car behind. It's that Mikel Ascona. Ascona is like Ivan Muller's actual literal shadow, isn't he? Wherever you see Ivan, there is Ascona right with him. So far this weekend, that's definitely been the case. Norbert Mikulis right in front is now trying to close a little. In fact, he's closed right up on Augusto Farfus. What's going on there? What's happened to Farfus? How has Norby suddenly come flying up behind him? There was 2 or 3 car lengths between them. Let's hear from the leader.
On the main straight, positions on the main straight, please.
Interesting. Now, I'm not entirely sure why you would do that. Ted Bjerg is placed 3rd in the championship, but he does as he's asked. Even though it was Erlacher who made the poor start and then hit his teammate, Bjerg just kept his foot in. That seems to me to be a very bizarre way of dealing with your team.
Unless there was some form of agreement between the drivers.
What, that where you qualify is where you finish? Surely you'd at least let them get off the line into turn 1. So what does Bjerg do wrong? Nothing at all. He just goes straight down his side of the grid. Erlacher comes across, hits him, nearly puts him in the pit wall. Loses momentum because he swerved across the track. That's why Erlacher was slower into turn 1, because he was slower off the grid and then went from side to side down into turn 1.
Completely agree.
Yikes. I mean, from the onboard, it is definitely Bjerg is going there into a gap that has been rapidly closed by his teammate. And the only reason Erlacher backed out of that is he knew it wasn't going to happen.
Bizarre.
Yeah, very bizarre. So Ted Bjerg, 3rd in the championship, and Jan Erlacher, who is 12th in the championship, have been asked to swap positions in Erlacher's favour. That's quite bizarre. Right, we'll leave...
My only other theory is that if Bjork's got a known problem, and therefore they wanted to swap them early doors, but obviously his pace is quite good at the moment.
Yep, his pace was perfectly good to be ahead of Jan Erlacher at the end of lap 1, so no reason to think that he wouldn't be ahead of him at the end of lap 2. And if the problem, whatever it was, showed itself, then Erlacher would go by anyway. They have definitely asked Ted to move aside, and that's quite bizarre. And now the other way round, asking Erlacher to move aside, I can understand that, because Bjerg is the best placed driver and Erlacher is a long way behind, 68 points to Bjerg's 125. He's got half the points of his teammate. However, we'll leave those tactics aside. Augusto Farfus, Norbert Michelis, 3rd and 4th in their Hyundais. Ivan Muller still 5th in the 3rd of the Blue Sign Racing cars. We're on board with him. And after that aggression on what you might assume would be fresher tyres at the beginning of race 3, then it looks as though that little edge has been blunted. However, Ivan being Ivan, if there is half the scent of a sniff of a potential pass, he'll go through, and Norby has to go very defensive as they come around turn 9. Down through into turn 10, heading down the long curving back straight. You can see the pit buildings and the grandstands in front of us. And this is all the new part of the track. Last time there was a Dutch Grand Prix here, 1985. They were using the full long version of the circuit, and this return leg down to the final corner was added after the Formula 1 circus had moved away from Zandvoort the last time back in the mid-80s, height of the turbo era. In fact, the last Formula 1 Grand Prix podium here, it was Niki Lauda beating Alain Prost in McLaren tags, with Ayrton Senna 3rd in a Lotus Renault turbo. Points in those days went all the way down to Nigel Mansell in 6th position in his Williams. Jan Erichet the leader, Ted Bjerg again showing his nose. So Bjerg's body language here is clearly, I've got the faster car, we all know I've got the faster car, I clearly chose when I'd finished braking for Tarzan to move offline and allow my teammate through, and now I want to get back past.
I personally think the Lincoln code's driving to a lap time. I think they can do a lot better than a 48.2.
Well, that might well be the case. They were certainly 4 seconds faster in qualifying, but qualifying is qualifying and racing is racing. Maybe Jan is the man who's the pace maker and setting the pace. We're on board with Nesta Girolami. Girolami just clinging to a point, and for his view, Ted Bjerg in 2nd is very bad news. Ted Bjerg in 1st would be even worse news, because that would be a 24-point difference, and that would put him ahead of Girolami, because he's only 8 behind Girolami. The good news for Munich Motorsport, though, is that Esteban Guerrieri is in 8th position, not in 15th, because if that had been the case, then Ted Bjerg, if he'd finished 1st with Guerrieri in 15th, would be the new championship leader. And that would be a massive turnaround of form in 2 race weekends, including Slovakia Ring, which was pretty much an unmitigated disaster for Cyan Racing's drivers.
Yeah, I think the Cyan drivers are controlling the pace of this race, and they're sitting quite comfortable.
Bjerg would not quite be the championship leader because he is 28 points off the lead, but then you've just robbed him of 5 points. Why would you do that? Jan Erichet got a bonus 5 points because he was handed pole position, and we got a bonus point because he'd already earned 4 for being 2nd in Q3. However, I think we'll probably not find out the true reason for that for quite some while. Augusto Farfus, Norbert Michelis, the chasing pack, there they are. Ivan Muller behind, you can see the blue nose of his Cyan Racing car. Now, Cyan Racing went 1, 2, 3, 4 in qualifying yesterday. They didn't even get a 1, 2, 3 out of it because Andy Prieur got jumped away from the line by Michael Ascona, and then got jumped in the last lap for 4th place by Benjamin Leuchter in his Golf. So Andy ended up in 5th spot, but they still got a 1, 2 with Ted Bjerg and Ivan Muller. And now looking at another 1, 2, and if Muller can engineer anything in there, maybe even a clean sweep of the podium. And Ivan has got his tail up and a lot of ire, I think, to express behind the wheel today. After change of BOP following qualifying, he was feeling the team had been unfairly treated. And then when he lost his pole, I'm sure he agreed entirely.
Okay, Jan, we've been asked to swap back on the next lap because the opinion here is you pulled across too early. Talk to me on the lap, but that's what we've been asked. What the fuck? Repeat that? I have the weakest engine of everybody. Of course, if we do a drag race, I lose. I have the weakest engine of everybody. Fuck, I'm already penalized like hell by this. You should think about that. It's the 2nd time now this season I'm fucked because of the engine.
Not a happy Jan Erichet. Well, I can't understand why anybody on the team bench asked him to be put back in front in the first place.
too many cooks spoiling the broth there, I think. The team made a bit of a decision to swap the positions, not really reviewing the evidence of the start line between Bjork and Erlacher. And now, after the replays, they seem to have a different opinion of it, but all makes them look rather silly.
It does, because what the first decision told us was that they had already decided before the cars went to the grid what the finishing order would be, where you qualified. Not even who made it, not even anything to do with the start, not who gets to the first corner first. I don't think even in Formula One we've ever said, well, apart from in Ferrari, obviously, in the Schumacher era, but realistically, you know...
Not where they've changed their minds, though.
Well, no. Yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen that.
Well,
I mean, it's a very curious one. All I can assume is that they thought that, probably from the radio traffic, who chopped who, and then having a proper look at the replay evidence, they've actually realised that it was Erlacher that chopped Bjork, which was completely obvious to us. But obviously,
watching the same TV picture that we're watching.
Sometimes when you're on the pit wall, you have a strong driver opinion appear on the radio, and people obviously in camps within camps, and you can easily get to the wrong decision. And maybe that's what they did. And then, having watched the replays that we've all sat and looked through, it's patently obvious that Erlacher chopped Ted and didn't make the better start. So I just think that's all a bit bizarre, really.
Yeah.
But of course, now remains to be seen whether the young Frenchman will move over for his older Swedish retainer. I'm not entirely convinced, because he's pretty emotional on the radio there, and he's still pushing. So maybe he's not going to let him through at all.
Well, he's obviously trying to make a point by making some distance between himself and Ted. Last time across, 1:48.0. Jan Erlacher, with the weakest engine in the train, has set the fastest lap of the race for any of the blue cars. Last time around, Ted Bjork 1:48.19, so a tenth slower. Fastest race lap, by the way, for Mehdi Banani, yet again. But at least this weekend, the Volkswagens are actually competitive and have finished on the podium. So you know that's just showing the true speed of the car, which we've already seen in race trim. So. Battle for sixth position. Mikel Ascona just dropping away a little bit from Ivan Muller, which will please Muller enormously, because he can now focus a little bit more on the cars in front. But actually, that was a big slide as it came over the top of the crest there from Ivan, wasn't it?
Certainly was.
Okay, that. We've got to reset, move on. We're looking at it afterwards. What?
Ron Hartfeld looking rather
going out over the tannoy as well.
And of course,
that's quite entertaining.
Of course, one thing we haven't actually discussed is that Phil Barker, unable to be here this weekend, who is normally Ted's race engineer. So, of course, perhaps normally Ron Hartfeld would be in a strategic position to oversee this. Of course, Ron Hartfeld is engineering Ted this weekend. So, A, he's not there to make the strategic decision, and B, of course, he probably has to recuse himself from that, because he has a bias because he's running Ted Bjork.
Exactly, so I can't make that decision.
Correct.
So in fact, that's gone to the man standing right behind, who is in overall charge of the program. There he is. So, you know, it's his decision. And again, Erlacher now has been persuaded that giving the spot back to Ted Bjork and allowing the various team parties to argue about it, I mean, they can do it with impunity, because although they're, quote, slow, they have managed to make sure that they're far enough ahead of Augusto Farfus to do all the jiggery-pokery. Not very far, but just far enough. Now what will be interesting is to see what was going to happen at the end of lap one and continue to happen, is how far Ted Bjork clears off and leaves Jan Erlacher with the weaker engine to deal with Farfus and Mikulits and everybody else.
I don't think he will. I think the Cyan cars are told not to go above a certain lap time. And I think that Ted knows that Jan's engine is perhaps a bit weak.
Thank you. Head down, reset. Let's go. No, thank you.
Well, listen, Jan, don't shoot the messenger. You got Duncan Laycock there on the right-hand side, Ronnie Hartfeld in the centre.
May well be Duncan making the decision, actually.
Well, it might well be, and you know, they're kind of responsible for the engineering side and the race engineering side, so somewhere in there, somebody's changed their mind a couple of times.
I also think it is the right decision. I think that if you were going to ask anybody to move for anybody, it would be that Erlache should be in second position if you're looking from a team management point of view.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe there is some justice in that, but clearly Jan doesn't see it that way.
Well, if Björk could come across from second on the grid and try to bounce Jan into the wall, then yes, I'd absolutely see why he feels aggrieved. However, it was the other way around. Jan may have started on pole, but he didn't make a good enough getaway, and it might entirely be down to a problem with his engine. That may well be the case, but the facts are Ted should have had the lead and now does. As you say, a 1:48.1 or 2 is probably as fast as we'll see the cars going. Now, the question is, how quick can the Hyundais go behind? Well, 1:48.1 is the fastest lap for Augusto Farfus. At the moment, though, he's kind of limited by the cars in front. We ride on board with our former points leader. Néstor Girolami came here with the points lead. But if they finish as they are, he will go away third in the standings behind Esteban Guerrieri and Ted Björk.
The theme from the other teams is questioning how much the Lynk & Co cars will control the pace, and you definitely sort of get the impression that that's what they're doing at this stage.
Well, one of the reasons for doing that, obviously, is not to highlight the fact that you could go faster. The other is to try and make sure that your tyres last longer. Néstor Girolami goes underneath maybe Bernani. He's still there. Bernani's drifting out wide. See all the sand, though, that Girolami was kicking up. He is still there. This is a definite effort by Girolami to get by him down into the S's, but unfortunately that leaves him on the outside. In fact, that's Huff. There's Girolami on the outside of Bernani, and he just can't hang on there. And that was a really solid effort from Néstor Girolami to try and get by. Unfortunately, it leaves him vulnerable for that final point to Jean-Carl Vernet. But Girolami is clearly in the mode where any single point he can gain now is going to be greatly treasured.
And there's never been a greater illustration of how Q2 can play with your weekend. You know, Néstor Girolami fighting to hold on to a point. You know, he was, I think, the championship leader coming into this race weekend. Esteban Guerrieri out-qualified him by 4/10, and that's one of the goals.
Yeah,
is
that's
it,
Leuchter, who was second in race 2 earlier today. He's clearly got a problem. Now, either he's got an engine problem, or he's picked up a puncture, or a transmission problem, but that car is going no further. In fact, I'm not entirely sure he's even going to make it back to the pits. From here on, he'd actually be better trying to make it back to Parc Fermé. The car is weaving, and he's got no engine left, has he? He's absolutely going to stop dead. And that might be a little bit of relief for the tyres of the Lynk & Co cars, because we might end up, if he's stopped on the circuit, potentially with a safety car. All the way back in 22nd. Yeah, Benny Leuchter's pulled off, and he's pulled off behind the fence, so we will avoid the problem for a safety car. Marcin Kwar's gone by Tom Coronel. Well, Coronel's gone by Mar, in fact, that's the way that works. So Coronel now up to 21st place, chasing Thiago Monteiro. Not going to be much of a reward for all their hard efforts this weekend, I'm afraid. Well, let's hear from Mar.
I am much quicker than Langerbert, but there is no way to pass here. There is no way to pass.
All right, not Mar, that was his teammate Kevin Chacon, and we ride on board with the Italian right behind Niels Lagerfeld. And as he's saying, there is, well, it's not quite, there's nowhere to pass, but the passing places are tough to use, even down into Tarzan here, the big banked right-hander at the end of the front straight. Everybody knows it's coming. It's possible to guard against it pretty well. Lap 12 of 15 is underway. This would have been the final lap in the previous 2 races, but we have 4 to go now.
Okay, Ivan, what you saw was Christian's decision. Let's talk after the race. Okay, I know that the cockpit position was clear before. Anyway, it's not the point to talk. We come back on the initial plan, and that's it. Telling my point.
Lap 12 to 15, final race of the weekend at Zandvoort for the FIA World Touring Car Cup. And it sounds as if almost all the family members are getting involved in the controversy between Jan Ellerche and Ted Björk. Ivan Muller on the radio arguing with his engineer about what the team boss had decided, that Ellerche should be allowed to go past Ted Björk despite losing the lead to his teammate at the start, and then be asked to hand the place back again.
But of course, you know, normally Christian Dahl wouldn't be making those decisions on the pit wall. Normally Ron Hartfeld would be making those decisions, but of course he can't because he's having to step in for Ted Björk's race engineer. And that's created a very, very unusual set of circumstances. Of course, it's all a bit political. Björk is Swedish, of course. He's been an employed driver of Christian Dahl for many, many years. Of course, Jan Ellerche is Ivan Muller's close nephew. So it's one of those kind of things that's gone from a lovely, happy camp of four very professional drivers that take care of each other into Game of Thrones inside one race weekend.
Yeah, it hasn't taken long, has it? You got one competitive weekend in a fortnight and suddenly it's daggers drawn at everybody's throat. Well, no positions changed on that lap, though. You can see Andy Priaulx in the middle of that little group trying hard to work his way up into the points. He's got to get ahead of the Audi of Jean-Carl Vernet. Problem is he's got the Audi of Frederick Vervisch right behind him. Audi not on the pace here this weekend at all in any shape whatsoever. Best Audi is Vernet, 1 point for his efforts, none for Vervisch. Niels Langeveld is next up behind him, and Gordon Shedden 25th, the last running car. So on board with Freddie Vervisch. And watch the difference of the body language between the cars. The Sign Racing Lincoln Co. just looks like it's moving around a lot more up on its toes perhaps through the corners. A little bit more roll than the Audis, and the Audi looks like quite a softly sprung car as well. Just in front you can see a little battle with, oh, that's Nestor Girolami trying again to get by Mehdi Banani for 13th place. He got alongside again, could not get through. Well, like Guerrieri, Girolami does not know the meaning of, okay, give it up now. Oh, whoa, 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 big moment there going in. You could see the gloves flash there as he had a huge save down into the S's, and that has rescued Girolami. Has rescued Banani rather from the pressure and put Girolami right back into the clutches of Jean-Carl Vernet.
And that's the problem with this circuit, because of the flow. The moment you end up offline, you just lose so much momentum, and that's what makes racing around here very difficult.
Look at the way that Girolami, trimmed out for speed, has just pulled away from Vernet, and Priaulx's under pressure. Frederick Vervisch trying to go the long way around the outside. There you are, one side-by-side move into Tarzan. That's the move around the outside that you can pull off. Didn't have quite enough momentum to stay on the outside to the exit curb, and Priaulx just clung on that low groove inside line. That's where the rubber is. So he hangs on to 16th. You know, these guys are so super competitive, hate losing so much. They will be at each other, daggers drawn for first and last. Every position will be really hard fought. Looking back from the 88 car, this is Rob Huff trying to find a way by Nicky Katzberg for 11th and 10th, and through he goes. And that's oh, and Katzberg cuts back underneath him. So Rob went through exiting Skyflak, and in Masters, Katzberg comes back. Now finally they're down through corner 9 into corner 10. Rob's got the inside line again. Not sure Katzberg's giving this one up. He's too well placed in the championship, and he's at home as well.
Great racing from both drivers, showing each other a lot of respect through those corners.
Well, again, look how close the barriers are. Look how huge the gravel traps aren't almost everywhere here. They know that if you make contact, it's not the Hungaro ring, you're going to have a big crash. So there is that sort of self-preservation. But you're right, one of the great things about this grid is the depth and quality. You know, even the new boys, looking at Mikel Ascona, even the new boys are racing like they're seasoned touring car pros.
Former teammates, of course, Huff and Katzberg know each other very, very well.
Final lap of the race. Ted Björk, Jan Ellerche, 1-2 for Lincoln Co. And still nobody has dipped out of the 1:48 barrier. Augusto Farfus right behind, but they're pretty comfortable in being able to dictate the pace because it's so hard to pass. Around the outside of Mar goes the number 50 car of Tom Coronel. So Coronel had Mar coming down the inside of him for 21st into Tarzan and swung around his nose to hang on to that spot. Again, 21st place, and they're battling like it's the lead on the last lap. Well, Augusto Farfus on his way to a podium finish at this rate behind Ted Bjerg and Jan Erlaché. And Bjerg will join Girolami as a 3-time winner and overhaul him in the points if nothing else changes in the last half of the lap. And I don't imagine somehow that the team are going to ask for a 3rd time that positions are changed between them. Looking back from Ivan Muller at Mikel Ascona. In race 1, this was the battle for 2nd, Muller versus Ascona. This is now the battle for 5th, and Johan Kristoffersen in 6th position, having finished 3rd in race 1. Here comes Benani on Girolami. Around the inside that time, and again, that looked like the end of a long 3 or 4 corner chase for Girolami. Now Benani has to hold on again. Girolami really pushing hard. Benani is stuck up behind the yellow Cupra of Aurelian Panis. The leader is heading towards the checkered flag. 2nd win of the weekend for Ted Bjerg, and his 3rd win of the season. This is a big, big weekend for Bjerg. Erlaché 2nd, Augusto Farfus. Oh, loses out to Norbert Michelis. Interesting. Norby is given 3rd place at the line. Augusto in 4th, Ivan in 5th, Mikel Ascona in 6th. 7th is Kristoffersen, 8th Guerrieri, 9th Tarquini, 10th Rob Huff, 11th Nicky Katzberg, 12th Aurelian Panis, and Jean-Carl Vernet pulls off and comes across last. Okay, didn't see what happened there. Did he have a big moment out the final corner that was happening just at the top of the screen? As I was looking at the results, trying to figure out where Benani and Girolami finished 13th and 14th, in fact. But it is a 2nd race win this weekend for Ted Bjerg.
Thank you for your patience, mate. Super job. Apologies for the challenges during the race, but very professional job. Super job.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I don't know that, but for me, the car was fantastic. Super balanced, everything. So, yeah, I cannot wish for more from the car. The Lincoln car was so nice to drive, and it really suits us this track. So, I was very happy to get that win.
Key phrase there, it really suits us, this track.
I was almost surprised then that he didn't say that his favourite colour was blue and he was driving as fast as he possibly could and there's nothing left in the car.
Well, he always stops short of saying, I can't believe we've achieved such a great result with such an underpowered car with the slowest car on the grid, you know, which was always Ivan's line. But, good job. Benny Leutner, the best lap trophy from Tag Heuer, a 1:47.077. That was in race 2, I would think. 1:47.880 by teammate Mehdi Benani in this race, and the most valuable driver of the weekend with a 63-point haul, Ted Bjerg. That's a massive point score, only 85 available. Oh dear, here's Jan.
Well done, Jan. I'm sorry that's how it was. I'm sorry I had to talk to you, but that's where we are. Good job, mate. You did a good job to reset yourself. I know you're fucking pissed off, but a good job to reset, keep it together for the P2. We'll look at it all afterwards. You did a good job, mate. Well done.
What we will look afterwards? What? Why did I fuck myself? Why did he do a bit of stuff at me? Well, I don't know. I am currently no Audi.
Clearly, Jan Erlaché is not to be placated. Again, apologies for the colourful language. There's Christian Dahl immediately going into damage limitation. Jan's not going to be particularly easily appeased, though. But, I mean, wherever they were in the points before the race, notwithstanding, Jan made a poor start. Ted didn't do anything wrong. Jan hit Ted trying to defend the lead. I saw no reason from the beginning to swap those positions around, and I still see no reason. What's happened by the first decision to ask them to swap positions, I think that has just made a massive mountain out of what was really a molehill.
I agree, and I think that may well be because the guy that normally does that wasn't able to, and perhaps people that don't normally make those decisions got involved. But one thing you definitely don't want at this stage of the season is teams within teams, and that's very easy to do in a 4-car team.
And the real problem is, clearly they had made a decision based on how the grid lined up, not what actually happened in real life. So clearly the decision was Jan was going to lead into the first corner. It's like Mach 3, you know, when they were going across, okay, Gabrielli will lead. No, Gabrielli's just stalled at the start. Well, what do we do now? Do we all stop and wait for plan A to happen?
It's the camera, it's on.
All right, so he's got the camera hat that Esteban Guerrieri had in the first race, and he will go down and have a quick chat with Alex Legui. She is waiting, huddled up against the cool. Might have to turn the air conditioning up a little bit in here. It's a bit warm in the commentary booth. Norbert Mikkel is down there as well in 3rd place. And there's Jan's mum, the blonde hair, Kathy Muller.
I appreciate it was difficult. Thank you.
Well, we'll hear first from our race 3 winner from Sign Racing Link & Co. It's Ted Björk.
Here we are with our winner of race 3, Ted Björk. Ted, that looked and sounded like a rather interesting race. Tell us about it from your perspective.
I had a perfect start, and Jan also thought he had a perfect start, and he wanted to be first into the first corner. But I was there, so it was not possible for him to do that. And yeah, I took it. But I'm also aggressive, and I was the same aggressive when I was Jan's age. So, you know, it's if you're a race driver, you want to win. Everybody out in the starting field wants to win. That's why we're here for. So I understand.
That looked like certainly a nice apologetic handshake there. You've now moved up to P2 in the standings as well. I know the race is long, but you are climbing.
Yeah, but you know, bouncing back as a team effort from Slovakia, where we were last time, feels so good with the Link & Co guys, Sign guys, and it just feels that, you know, we can get a car that I like and love to drive. And you saw what Ivan did. You know, Ivan was the fastest of us today, but he couldn't. Yeah, we didn't get it. So we will keep pushing and have to be on the edge all the time.
A great weekend for you. Well done, Ted.
Thank you.
Well, Ted, one thing about him is he takes his chances when they come his way. He does not allow points to drop. So Jan Ellershey looking pretty unhappy, but he did not get a good start. Ted did, and that should have been it. There should have been no further conversations about it. Why this was requested by the team to happen, don't understand why Ellershey was put back in front, and then, you know, the whole thing is then 15 laps of arguing on the radio.
That was the mistake. The mistake was that they asked Björk to yield to Erlacher, and then obviously got themselves into a hole that need not have been there.
That was a classic pickle. So here is the result then. Ted Björk, Jan Ellershey 1-2. Norbert Mikkelitz on the podium in 3rd. That he was handed by Augusto Farfus, I'm pretty sure of that, on the last lap. Ivan Muller in 5th, Mikel Ascona in 6th. The remaining points go to Johan Kristoffersen, Esteban Guerrieri, Gabriele Tarquini and Rob Huff in the top 10. And to Nicky Katzberg, Aurelian Panis, Mehdi Banani, Nestor Girolami and Andy Prio down to 15th place. Out of the points, Fredrik Vervish, Niels Langefelt in their Audis, Kevin Chicon, Thiago Montero, Tom Coronel, Marcin Kwa, Attila Tashi, Daniel Hegloff, Gordon Shedden and Jean-Carl Vernet, who had a problem right at the very end and slowed to finish the last running car. Benny Leuchtner, who was in 2nd place in race 2, Leuchter pulling off before the end of the race and parking his Golf with what seemed like an engine failure. Esteban Guerrieri is our leader then, heading away from here, 11 points ahead of Ted Björk, with Nestor Girolami, who came here as the leader, down to 3rd position, and Norby is just 5 points back. Whatever else about Zandvoort, it has changed the lead and closed the top of the table right up. And names that had barely been on talking terms with points have gone away with a big bagful this weekend. Well, it is an interesting result from this race weekend. Still, 2 of the top 3 cars are Hondas, run by Munich Sport. 2 of the bottom 3 cars are Hondas run by KCMG, Montero and Tassi. Now, they don't necessarily have the experience and the recent experience that the Munich Motorsport drivers do, but clearly Munich are doing an exceptional job with their Honda. Well, Yann Lachet keeping the helmet on for a long while, almost as if he'd crashed out of the lead, but now he's ready to go up to the podium. Saw Ted Björk there with his young son Tor. He's getting ready to go up as well. And Richard Coleman, I'm pretty sure that we'll find out that Augusto Farfus handed over that place to Norbert Michelis. Gusto came in here 13th place, and after 3 pretty tough race weekends, will have been, I'm sure, understanding that they wanted to put Norby, who's in the top 4 in the championship, in as good a position as possible. For Gusto, probably doesn't make much difference. He's had a good race weekend. He's raced strongly. He's qualified well. For him, in his head, he'll feel, right, I'm on top of this now. Now I can think about trying to get some race wins.
Yeah, he's obviously back to front-wheel drive racing and sort of building that picture back up in effect. And Norbert at the moment is probably looking the most likely championship contender from the Hyundai camp. So very, very logical. You know, Norbert Michelis very unlucky not to win a world championship a couple of years ago, and yeah, completely understand the sporting rationale behind that switch.
Well, listen, you know, I think now Jan is starting to, okay, he's out of the car, the adrenaline's sunk a bit, he's put in a slightly more rational face on this. You know, when you're ramped full of adrenaline in a race, you've just lost the lead, been given it back, had it taken away again. Of course the emotions are high, but you know, again, Ted is such a calm and open and straightforward figure. I think it's going to be very hard for that to simmer much longer than the flight home. So hopefully by the time they get to racing again, it will be a little bit back to situation normal. Kathy Muller looks pretty relaxed and happy. She's pretty happy, probably, because the race is over and her boy is safely out of the car. That's, as a mum, that's her prime concern these days, definitely. Circuit Park Zandvoort, the FIA WTCR, part of the Jumbo race weekend. Not a great start from poleman Yann Lachet for race 3 in Zandvoort. He put the moves in on teammate Ted Björk to try and stop the Swede getting through into the lead, but failed. At the end of the first lap, Björk was asked to give the lead back to Lachet, and that's when the radio traffic problem started. Further back, everybody getting close and personal, trying to find a way past on the roller coaster Dutch circuit. Having examined the evidence, the team decided that Lachet, having made a poor start, should perhaps not have been handed a lead that he never actually took. And before long, they were suggesting to Lachet that he would have to let Ted Björk go back past him, which, after the inevitable counter-arguing, he eventually did. The Lincoln Co cars were never really under threat for the lead of the race, from Augusto Farfus in 3rd. Further back, Esteban Guerrieri and Nestor Girolami battling. Benny Loister pulling off, the only car that failed to finish. Girolami trying to move up the order at the tail of the points. A big oversteering moment as he battled with Mehdi Bernardi yet again to get through. Ted Björk claimed his 2nd win of the weekend, his 3rd of the season. Yann Lachet in 2nd place, and Norbert Michelis handed 3rd at the line by teammate Augusto Farfus.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 3rd podium of this weekend here at Circuit Zandvoort of the FIA World Touring Car Cup by Oscaro. Please welcome onto the podium from BRC Hyundai N Squadra Corse. In 3rd position, it's Norby Michelis. In 2nd position from Cyan Performance Lincoln Co, it's Yann Lachet. And please welcome your winner from Cyan Racing Lincoln Co, it's Ted Björk. And representing Cyan Racing Link & Co is Kim Lind. And now the national anthem for both Ted Björk and Cyan Racing Link & Co. Johan Luigi, Oscaro Power Marketing Director, will present the third position trophy to BRC Hyundai N Squadra Corses Novi Michelitz. The owner of Circuit Zandvoort, Bernhard van Oranje, will present the second position trophy to Cyan Performance Link & Co.'s Jan Erlashe. The president of the FIA, Jean Todt, will present our winning trophy to Cyan Racing Link & Co.'s Ted Björk. The Chief Executive Officer of Circuit Zandvoort, Robert van Overdijk, will present to Cyan Racing Link & Co. the winning team trophy to Kim Lind. Now, please come together for your official photograph. Grab those bottles, gents. Ready for champagne.
Well, that is it from Circuit Park Zandvoort. Don't forget, the next race comes up towards the end of June. It is Friday and Saturday, the 21st and 22nd of June. We'll be at the Nordschleife of the Nürburgring, one of the most fearsome racetracks of them all. Who will come out on top? How will the balance of power change in the championship? There's only one way to find out. You'll have to join us there. Well, that is it from all of us on behalf of the entire team. For Richard Coleman and for Alex Le Gui, I'm Martin Haven saying thank you for joining us here in Zandvoort. We'll see you for the Nürburgring.
Talk to me on the lap, and that's what we've been asked.